hello to us so we can see who's here. Hello, Pamela. Great to have you here. Looking forward myself to being in Arizona in a few weeks, the end of October. It's going to be good. Harker Heights, great area near Waco. Welcome. Chris, I'm really pumped about this webinar because, everywhere we go, whether we're doing council retreats, management team retreats, we hear from people again and again, we got a housing problem. And it doesn't matter if it's a suburb connected to a major city or a city itself or a standalone community, large or small. Housing is one of the main issues that municipalities and counties are dealing with. So we're going to hear something about that. I bet that's even a bit of a challenge in Graham.
It absolutely is one of the main challenges in Graham, especially when you drill down to, attracting industry requires a workforce requires homes. And so, yeah, that's been a hot topic for sure with our city council and EDC and chamber.
Yeah. And there's no one silver bullet solution for this challenge, but we're going to hear today from some folks in the city of Waco and their cooperation or partnership with Texas State Technical College. Used to be called, when I was a student at Baylor, TSTI. Now it's TSTC. And I heard about this, I can't remember how, but I got real excited about it. And we were able to get City of Waco to come and to share this with us. So I want to welcome Galen Price and Josh Caballero and Bobby Horner to share with us. And I think, Galen, you're going to start. So I'm going to throw it over to you. Thank you. Welcome. And we're looking forward to hearing what you have to share with us.
All right. Well, thanks, Mike and Carissa. Let me go ahead and share my screen before we get started. Let's see. So as Mike mentioned, we like as other cities around here, just around the country, period, are facing a housing crisis, a housing problem. One, there are a couple of things with availability of decent quality, safe and affordable housing, in addition to just the affordability component and trying to have people who have the opportunity to afford where they're living. And so recently we did a housing study that finished a couple of years ago. And in that study, it identified several different recommendations and strategies to us as a city to help us address our housing needs. Now, a couple of things that stood out of the study, the key components were one, that we were approximately about 5,000 units short just of housing units, period, where that includes single family, multifamily, all the different housing options that you would have. We were approximately 5,000 units short. The other key component that came out of the study was that we actually had what's called a housing mismatch. Now, what that means is that we have individuals who can afford to pay higher costs, but they are, for personal preferences, personal choices, or just the lack of availability of housing units, you're starting to see, we were seeing individuals who were buying down or renting down, meaning that they were spending less than 30% of their income on their housing costs. So what that does is individuals who are in our lower income brackets, let's say individuals who are on fixed income such as Social Security, their housing options then become limited because the amount of housing available for all populations, or that basically shrinks at that point. So you have individuals who only make a certain amount actually paying more than what they should be for housing costs. So you have individuals who earn a little bit more than others paying less, but then you have individuals who earn less paying more, hence the housing mismatch that has occurred. So one of the things that we've done in relation to this study is create different task force to address different issues that were brought up in the study. And one of the solutions that was proposed is to look at accessory dwelling units as an option to create additional housing units and to create some additional affordable housing units. And so in today's presentation, we'll be talking about the definition of ADUs. We refer to them as ADUs. Some people refer to them as tiny homes. It's interchangeable definitions. Then we have some of our challenges and solutions with the project, as well as some of the guidelines that we established for ADUs. And then we'll get into the partnership about how all of this came about with our TSTC, our local college here. And so what an ADU is essentially what an ADU stands for is accessory dwelling unit. They're most commonly known as what we would call a mother-in-law suite or a second house, if you will, that's on the property. What it does, it allows for independent living of potential family members on the same property as the primary structure. So what it alleviates and what it helps to overcome is potential overcrowding in the primary housing unit. Because of housing costs and because of rising construction costs, just all inflation, you have several generations of families potentially living together to save money and save on those housing expenses. So what an ADU does is provide an additional unit on the same property, which alleviates some of the overcrowding in the primary housing unit. And so our goal in doing ADUs, as I mentioned previously, was one, to increase the different housing options that are available, in addition to making opportunities for affordable housing available. Again, with the shortage that we have in housing units here, cost-wise, we can see that this adds in an opportunity to address some of the critical issues that we've seen. In addition to, this would allow seniors to remain in their homes or remain on property as they may be able to transition into the ADU unit as opposed to living in the primary residential unit. And could have that with additional family living in a primary residential unit while they reside in the ADU. And so now there are some potential challenges that you face with looking to develop this type of unit. For example, in looking at designing these units, you need to ensure that the units are compatible with the existing neighborhoods, along with educating the community as to what these units can be used for. What you don't want is different designs that don't mesh with what's currently built in the neighborhood or what's planned to be built in that neighborhood. And so, in regards to that, ADUs are not for everyone, but can be used just as a potential tool in the toolbox to help address some additional issues that that you may face as a community. And so with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Josh, and he's going to get a little bit more into the process.
Thanks, Galen. So as Galen mentioned, one of the things that we wanted to do was to kind of create a streamlined process. This was something that addressed some of the challenges that were on the previous slide that Galen mentioned. And so we wanted to kind of get a feel for what that could look like to help expedite and make this as easy as possible for residents if they chose to build an ADU on their property. And so as a part of that, one of the things that we began to do was really to look and turn to cities who had allowed ADUs for quite some time now to really get a feel for what they have done, what that looked like. And one of the things that we saw from that was this idea of a kind of a pre-approved plan and design for an ADU. And so we knew that we wanted 3 to 5 pre-approved plans here in the city of Waco that would be available to residents, primarily to give residents an option of what it could look like and kind of give them a starting point to really begin to be able to do this process if they chose. But more importantly, we wanted this to be pre-approved. We knew that if we could get it through our planning process and permitting process, then not only would it expedite that process for the residents on their end, but we could also waive fees and make this a little bit more of an affordable option. And then in addition to that, what we really wanted, and part of the things that we saw from cities that had already had ADU ordinances, was one of the challenges was that people didn't know how to begin the process and what steps to take. And so as a part of our process here in the city, we wanted to also make sure that we were looking at technical assistance and thinking through what that could look like for residents and how we could go about kind of creating a handbook and making that process as easy as possible so that people knew what steps they needed to take. Now, as a part of that, I mentioned a moment ago, we do have an ADU ordinance, so that was kind of our first step in the process, was to get that on the books locally. Galen mentioned earlier that we, as a part of our strategic housing plan, put 4 different task groups together. And one of the things that our task group focused on housing density really did for us was to look at the language in the ordinance and help craft some of that language for us. And so one of the things that these are kind of a few of the guidelines in our ADU ordinance. It is a 1-bedroom unit. We are only allowing 1 per traditional single family lot. We have some setback requirements as a part of that. And I can tell you one of the things that was really important to us that the task group members were able to provide some feedback into was the size of the ADU itself. And so we do have a size requirement of 500 square feet. I can tell you part of the reason for that is that, as Galen mentioned earlier, we do have kind of housing mismatch occurring in our local community, which is putting the hardest strain when it comes to housing units on our lowest income population and also our senior population. When we spoke with our local housing authority here in Waco, we found out that what they lack the most are actually 1-bedroom units. So we felt this was a way to address several needs in our community, and that 500 square feet requirement is actually in line with HUD's requirement for a housing voucher. And so because of that, our ADU units can also be used with a housing voucher if desired to be used that way. And so we wanted to make sure to include that language in our ordinance as well. In addition to that, we wanted to make sure that part of the interest in ADUs and part of the appeal is that you can increase higher density with a accessory dwelling unit using existing infrastructure without really changing what a neighborhood looks like. And so you'll see here as well that part of the language in our ordinance also includes making sure that the unit itself does not look abnormal from the surrounding neighborhood. And so we have some requirements around height, that it matches the existing main unit on the lot, and also that the exterior design is similar in nature, so that it kind of matches as you're driving through neighborhoods in Waco, and also so that it is not looking, it looks well within the neighborhood. And so that was important to us. So how do we go about doing this then? Actually, we have the language in our ordinance. We have kind of an idea of what we want to do with some goals in mind, kind of our pre-approved process. And so we looked, and a couple of cities have done some ADU pre-approved designs. Most of them have gotten architects to do this. We knew we had a good resource here locally in TSTC. And so we began a conversation to really think through what a partnership could look like. And we're able to do that, partnering with a group of students out there, with a class in particular, to really kind of get this going, and have those students get some real work in being able to design ADUs for us. And so I know Bobby's going to talk about that a little bit more here in a moment, so I won't spend too much time on that. But we were able to get several designs from students as a part of that process. And I'll kind of tell you how that began. And so one of the first things Bobby and I did was to go out and meet with that class of students to really review with them why this was important for Waco, kind of give them an overview of our housing challenges and needs here, and why we felt ADUs could begin to address some of those challenges in our community. In addition to that, we wanted to make sure that we set them up for success. And so we, as a part of that initial meeting with them, reviewed the language in the ADU ordinance so that they knew exactly what parameters they had as they were beginning to design ADUs as a part of this project for us. And then we set up regular kind of ongoing meetings with our planning division here at the city to make sure that what they were coming up with met our specifications for both within the ordinance, but then also our permitting requirements as a part of that as well. And so knowing that we have a variety of types of housing here in Waco, we wanted to make sure that one of the things that we did was actually provide examples to students of different types of housing here in Waco. So my team and I actually went out and looked at a variety of different lots and existing homes within different areas and neighborhoods of Waco, and we're able to send those to the students. So you'll see here an example from South Waco, where this is a lot. We have the lot size there and the home square footage, as well as whether or not this home actually has alley access. Those are just some minor things, but those are things that are important for students to be aware of and know as they began to design their ADUs, thinking about, okay, I can design an ADU, but how does that actually fit within an existing lot, with an existing home in an existing neighborhood? And so is my ADU design actually going to be used within the city? And so we wanted to provide them with a few examples of what that could look like across the city, so that they could begin to design with those parameters in mind, and with the parameters within the ADU ordinance itself, setback requirements and so forth, really thinking about what their ADU could actually look like. So I'll turn it over to Bobby at this time, who's going to talk a little bit specifically about what students were able to do in that process.
Yeah, thanks, Joshua. Yeah, it was when we first was talking about this last year, the idea when it came up to go to TSTC, I jumped all over that because I actually am a graduate from out there in the drafting and design technology. Now, as my father-in-law used to say, back in antiquity, I used to draw this by hand, but now they've got all the computer aided drafting things that they can do now, which was really cool. And what really started exciting us is when we talked to TSTC, they were all over that. I mean, they were excited to team up with a city. And so the instructor actually proposed that he would set up he had 5 students that he wanted to set up their curriculum around this project. So I thought, man, this is just getting better and better, because this was going to be their project. And once they got into it, and after Joshua and them told them what the parameters were, what really blew us away was how serious these students took this. I mean, even to the point some of the designs had accessibility features. All of these designs can be adapted in different ways, and I'll get into that here in just a second. But the other thing that started to occur to us, well, why don't we maybe halfway through the preliminary design process get the students to come in and present to the city staff? This would give them some real world experience presenting to a client, which at some point they're probably going to be doing once they get out and get their jobs and working for architect, contractor, whoever, developer, whoever it may be. And they did a fantastic job, and everybody had their own ideas, everybody had their own design, and so this process just kept going. And so the pre-approved design, and one of them, this is an example of one of them. The student that did this, actually, this video, we don't have a video, but this one actually had a video submitted with it where he did the fly through, so you could kind of see what it looked like from the inside, and that was fantastic in and of itself. Now, one of the things that, and I think Joshua alluded to this, whenever these designs are coming out, the question may come up, well, what if somebody likes this, but maybe they want to change a different roof pitch? Or what if they want a hip roof versus a gable roof? There are some details that we are still working through that the owner, if they should want to do that and it still meets our ADU guidelines, the owner is still going to have to submit some changes that they would like to do if they want to use one of our designs. And let me just say that people do not have to use these pre-approved designs. We just wanted to offer this as an option that maybe saves some time, as we've said already. They could go out and hire their own design person and they could come up with their own design. But these, maybe offering a no-fee permit if they should select some of these designs. And so what I've been doing is going through these plans and looking at, making sure the code requirements are being met. I will get with our plan review team and make sure everything's good. And so if the owner does want to make some changes, maybe they're siding, maybe they want to add a little bit of brick somewhere. Those are some details that the owners would have to submit. Now, Joshua mentioned about, looking at different examples around the city. One of the things the owner would have to provide for us is the site plan of their property. And show us that this ADU design that they have picked meets the parameters of the setbacks and everything that we have set forth in the design. And the other thing too, I wanted to mention, and it's real important because I have a chance to work with students quite a bit through our Bluebonnet chapter, ICC, Skills USA. We had these students design these to meet not only this ordinance, but they had to design and meet to in this case, the 2018 International Residential Code. So they had not only the ordinance requirements, but they also had the building code requirements to look at. So again, we were trying to make a real world experience for these students and train them how to go through the code book. We provided some code books for them to look at. And so again, they have done a great job. They kept the accessibility aspect on some of the adaptability of some of these designs. So some of the things that we need to look at on the city side is to, some of these designs were, for example, the students used 2x6 exterior walls. which is fine by code, but somebody may say, well, what if I just want to do 2x4 studs, which is also fine. So this is some details that we are looking at on our end so that we could, try to make this as painless, if that's the word, for any citizens that may want to look at using one of these designs. And then they would have to also submit an engineered foundation plan, which anyone who builds here in Waco has to do that anyway. So there's a few little details that an owner would have to still submit to us for review. But again, we are so excited about what the students have done with this. The other little challenge that we are working through, and I've talked to TSTC about this. What happens when the students change classes, or maybe they move on in their career? I know one of the young ladies that helped us has, I think, moved back north to be with her family. So, if there's some design changes or anything, that's something that we will just have to have a good understanding with a citizen up front that there may be a little tweaking that needs to go on with different things. But it's really exciting. And again, the students went on ahead, and even though you don't see it here, they did provide details of the building itself, actual construction documents that anyone would have to submit for any kind of, say, a residential project here in Waco. Now, one of my, I guess you could say, one of my dreams. Now, there's nothing in the works because of this. We've talked about it internally. I would think, or I would love to see maybe TSTC's building construction trades class take one or two of these designs and build it out on site again to keep the relationship going with TSTC, which they have emphasized they definitely want to keep this going. But it would give the students out there on the building construction trades a chance to build a full-fledged dwelling unit, which maybe we could arrange to have our inspectors go out and even look at it and get them some experience talking with inspectors. That is not anything official. It's just a dream of mine. I've gotten some positive feedback from other members of our team about that. So that's one of those that I guess you could say, stay tuned. We'll see how that happens. But I'm excited about this project. I'm excited about working with TSTC. We actually went through the contract phase between the city and TSTC. And in talking with Josh, this may be the first time that something like this has actually happened between a school and a city, instead of just having maybe individual architects do this. This was actually a school and City of Waco contract that we worked up. So it was really exciting to work with these students. They had good questions, and the benefit that it had for us as a staff is once we started seeing these designs on paper and on a site plan, it raised questions for us. What do we need to tweak this? Do we, what do we need to do to help this process along? So that is kind of in a nutshell where we're at. I've got all these designs here in my office, and we'll be continuing to look through them and just making some notes. But again, people, if they want to go ahead and do an ADU, they could submit their own plan. It would be looked at per our ordinance as Joshua has outlined, and then we would look at it from the code side. So it's an exciting deal. I think that our city council did a great job of approving this ordinance to help in some of the housing shortage. And it seems to be, I'm hearing more and more about, not only here, but other cities looking at this problem that's around our country, a housing shortage. So this is just one means, and one thing that these houses, and I'll finish up with this, one of the things that I think these ADUs will help is, if you remember when COVID hit, families that had their families and parents in skilled nursing facilities, they kind of got shut off. I mean, they couldn't access them due to the COVID virus and also the pandemic. And so having a on-site living unit for parents, I think is going to be real appealing to a lot of people, and they can give them their own independence, as Galen mentioned, but they'll be right there so that family could take care of them, or it could provide extra income for it. Now, these are not for the Airbnb type setup. This is for actual assisted living or homes for people, long-term, home ownership or home rental, as the case may be. So I'm going to finish up to that. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Mike and see what kind of questions that we might have.
Wow. Well, thank you, everyone. That's a fascinating project. And I have several questions I want to just ask you guys. And I want to say to those of you that are listening, if you have some questions, if you'll use either the Q&A feature or the chat box, Chris and I will try to get those questions to them. You answered one of them, Bobby. The questions I had was, are people able to use this for short-term rental like an Airbnb? And you indicated no. Is that a part of your ordinance that you passed that prohibited that, or just speak to that?
Yeah, I had asked that question just for my clarification, and I was talking to the director of our department, and that for one, and that was not the intent for that the council, as I understand it, and Galen and Joshua can answer this too, but it was our understanding this is for maybe young families, for example, that were starting out, and maybe that helps them at least get their own place. We have short-term rental ordinances that's completely different from this.
Okay.
And so there are guidelines and licensing that go as part of that. So the intent was not for that. Galen, you may have some other additional information on that, but that was my understanding of the intent.
Yes. The intent is to provide long-term affordability options with these ADU units. And so we do already have our STR mechanisms in place and those requirements, as well as given they're only allowed to be within so many feet of another STR. And so the whole goal and purpose of here was to address the overcrowding issues that families may be facing, in addition to the affordability issue. And that's the goal of this program. And it's a thing that we're piloting now. We do have the ordinance, but as if there are unintended consequences that may arise, it would be something that we would definitely want to revisit and ensure that all the intents of what the program was designed for are being met.
Right.
And Mike, one other thing I might throw in there too is these units are on the same property and part of the main house. These can't be sold separately. So it's all kind of it's all part of, something, it's tied into the utilities and things like that. So I wanted to clarify that it's not another single family lot that somebody could purchase.
Right. We'll have a question that in the chat box, and Chris, we'll get to that in just a second. I want to ask one other about zoning. What were the zoning challenges that you had, if any, as you began this process?
Well, actually, we have there hasn't been any challenges to date at this point. What this idea actually kind of stemmed from is that we have an area of town that already essentially had some of these structures in the back. So there's an area in North Waco where there are some existing structures that, as we went through our housing study, we noticed that they are lacking, they're either lacking plumbing facilities and or kitchen facilities. So there's a lot of existing properties that if these were an option, all they would need would be all additional work would need to be done would be just to be plumbed out and or designed out to have full access to these different to make these livable for independent living spaces on the actual property. So
Okay. So we had a question that came in. It's probably similar answer, but what about neighborhoods where you have an HOA? How would you deal with those? Would HOAs allow those to be built in those neighborhoods?
well, that would depend on kind of what the framework is and the HOA specifically. Just as with with your regular HOAs that you have, I mean, there are some, depending on the HOA, there may be some restrictions, some design requirements, just as you would see maybe in a PUD, a planned unit development.
Okay.
So I think those are, it would vary by HOA, but I would say that given kind of where the way the ordinance is structured, it does lend itself to not, not having any issues potentially with an HOA, given the design standards and the requirements from the design aspect of it. So.
Yeah. Now you have, I think, 5. Is that what are you planning to do more that are pre-approved? Or are you happy with, okay, we got 5, that's not what we want to do next?
Yeah, we came up with those 5 designs. I think that will be kind of where we are at this point. Because those are kind of starting points for individuals. Now, the beauty of those 5 designs is that they will be pre-approved plans, so it will definitely help streamline the process. And these will be plans that are available at no cost to the individuals who are interested in ADUs and may want to access those plans. So therefore, it kind of eliminates potential costs for them if they were to use these plans. In addition to, we have had conversations with a couple of lenders in our market to see if there are products that they can design to help finance these. So we've had those conversations, and I believe we are getting close to a lender actually having a product that would be suited to help finance these units as well. The other component of this is that given that with some of those that are existing structures that would need conversion with the limited plumbing or just some additional needs, that could be eligible under our home rehabilitation program that we offer here at the city. So.
Yeah. Do you have
Mike, one more thing real quick, if I may,
Oh, yeah,
about
sure, Josh.
the 5 designs, is that part of the beauty with this is also that, one, we didn't want it to get too many because, right, they are going through this pre-approved process. But the other nice thing about this is that each of those designs is also adaptable. So they lend themselves to various sorts of things, both aesthetically, but then also even with the floor plan itself, where they could be easily adjusted. So that in itself also makes it, folks have some options as a part of that.
Now, I saw where it has to be minimum 500 square feet. Out of the 5 that you've pre-approved, what's the largest that you've approved?
I think that all 5, I think, are kind of in that range. There may have been one that was slightly larger. One of the students even did like a 2-story and still met the requirement. So, and that's what I was saying earlier. They really thought this through, even with a little carport built in. So there's some neat options there. But most of them are around I think the 500 or 600 square feet on these particular plans. Now, I did think of one other thing, and my apologies if this got mentioned earlier. I've been asked this question: if my lot is big enough, can I have more than one? And I think Joshua went over the ordinance. You can only have one on your single family lot. Even if you've got room to put another one, it's only one per single family lot. So,
Right.
but that question did come up early on, so I just wanted to throw that out again.
Great question. Here's another one that's come up. Is this permitted for all your residential zoning districts, regardless of the lot size?
I believe so. And I'm trying to think of an instance where it may not be, but to my knowledge, I believe that it is.
Okay.
Galen, I believe that's right. I will say though, there are some lot sizes that would not lend themselves to an
Yes.
ADU on the
Yeah.
property, given the parameters within the
Gotcha.
ordinance itself and the setback requirements and the size limitations. So it in that way, it does exclude some lots, but it is permitted within all of our zoning. Yeah.
Yeah. Any rough estimate on what the cost to build would be? I know it's going to vary from place to place, but just in general, what are you estimating the cost of actually building one of those is?
I believe the last estimate I saw was around 40 to 45K.
Mhm.
Is now that has been some time ago.
Yeah.
So
So that was this morning.
don't
That
hold
was
me
this
to
morning
it.
before 11 a.m., right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
know.
don't hold me to it. But
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this
we
is
did have an estimate that was between 40 and 45K.
okay. All right. Well, we really even haven't had a chance to get into the impact for the students, but man, what a great opportunity for them to get real world skills. And I can only imagine the leg up that gives them on their, career. And I'm just really so excited. What a great project. And I'm going to be excited to see how it continues to grow. Bobby, I loved your idea about the possibility of actually building one on site there at TSTC. And man, kudos to both the city and the college for this incredible program. And I think we'll probably hear about other cities that want to take your plans or learn from you and do it. We don't all have universities that can do that. So yes, we will share if it's okay with the city, we'll share your slide presentation as a PDF with all of our people that signed up for the webinar. And Galen and Josh and Bobby, I can't thank you enough. It's just been great. It gives me hope because, yes, housing shortage is a challenge. We know it. And as I said earlier, no, there's no silver bullet, but yes, we can also find a way to address it. And you guys are leading the way in that, and kudos to you for that. So thanks again for being with us, everyone. Thank you, City of Waco and Texas State Technical College for your assistance in this. And we want to wish you the best, and we will see you down the road. Thanks so much. Have a great day, everybody.